Are you a brand new painter and you don't have a lot of money to spend on expensive Bob Ross paints? Well, you're in luck. In this video right here, I'm going to show you an awesome alternative that works just as well, doesn't cost as much money, and it's going to be perfect for any beginner out there. Let's go. Hey, it's me, it's Wild coming at you to help you with your creative adventures. First time here, need a little bit of hand-holding or inspiration? You came to the right spot. Hit that subscribe button down below and tick that bell so you know when my videos go live for you. One question I get asked all the time, is there any good alternative to these Bob Ross paints? And you know what? Yeah, there is. Winsor Newton makes a great alternative that works just as well, and hey, it costs less money too. Now, before you stop watching the video, there are pluses and minuses from switching from the Bob Ross paint over to the Winsor Newton paint. And in fact, I actually recommend not using some of the colors. So let me go into it so that way you know exactly what to get. So as you go forward with your painting, you're gonna have an easier time transitioning from these colors, or perhaps even getting the most out of your Bob Ross paints, okay? Now, if you're a beginner painter out there and you're just starting on your adventures with Wet n Wet, I still recommend going with the Bob Ross paints. And here is why. These tubes and paints are specially formulated to work with the wet on wet technique. So that way things will blend properly and that way things will stick on top of other things properly. When you switch over to something like a Winsor Newton paint, it actually becomes a lot more difficult to blend and layer because they're not specially formulated for the wet on wet technique. However, you can still get them to work. So if you're just starting off, I would still recommend Bob Ross paints. But let's say you've done a couple of paintings and you've got a few under your belt and you're starting to feel better, plus you want to save some money. Well, that's when I recommend switching over to Winsor Newton paints. However, there are some key differences with the colors and techniques that I would love to show you. Let's start off with the big daddy of them all, titanium white. Now, Bob Ross always says that his paints are firm, and that is more or less true. However, as the years have gone on, Winsor Newton paint is a lot more firmer than Bob Ross paint, which is why titanium white from Winsor Newton is excellent for any time you have to put snow on mountains. It's so firm that it naturally breaks beautifully as you come across, whereas using titanium white from the Bob Ross company is a lot more difficult, which is probably why a lot of you struggle. Now, hey, guess what? Key trade-off here. While you do get firm paint that'll be beautiful on mountains and heck, yes, even clouds when you make them, this paint right here is very hard to layer or make snow with because it's so firm and it doesn't flow. If you want to add snow on top of your trees, hey, guess what? The Bob Ross paint is a lot easier to do that with. Hey, you want to add details in your water or perhaps you want to make your ground flow with snow? Yeah, Bob Ross paint is a lot easier for that. So pick and choose what paint you need to use depending on the situation. Speaking of getting colors to stick on top of colors, a lot of Bob Ross paintings make you add highlights to trees and bushes, which means you're going to be using cadmium yellow. And Bob Ross cadmium yellow is actually really easy to get to stick with highlights. And Winsor Newton cad yellow is very difficult. Why? Again, because this paint is really firm, which means you're gonna have to fatten it up by adding in oils or mixing it with liquid white so that way it becomes a little fattier and more sticky, so that way it makes it easy, which means essentially you'd be going through a lot more paint. So again, Bob Ross paint for cad yellow and perhaps even its bright red is gonna help you out for making highlights compared to something like this. If you're a person that struggles with trees out there, using Van Dyke Brown from Winsor Newton can be a little difficult for the reason that it's really firm again. Using Bob Ross Van Dyke Brown is actually a lot easier if you need to put in branches or some thin trunks in the background because again, it's a little bit thinner, thus it flows a lot easier. So the paints I just recommended from cadmium yellow to Van Dyke Brown to titanium white, you again have to pick and choose which situation is best for you. Now, hey, the best part about this is you can still buy both paints and use them for the situation that you need to use them in. It's really up to you. But more or less, Winsor Newton paints pretty much do everything that you need them to do. Again, it just comes down to the situation that you need, and essentially I'm just giving you more tools so that way you can dominate your painting going forward. So what do I think about Winsor Newton paints overall? I like them. I like them a lot. You can buy tubes between $10 and $25 at your local art store or even online. I'll do you a favor, I'll put links down below at the cheapest place you can buy them online. By the way, those links help me out, so thank you very much. Now, the only negative side overall to Winsor Newton paints is they're more or less considered entry level or student grade, which means there's not a ton of pigment in here, which means the colors aren't gonna be as rich as like a Bob Ross paint or a higher paint that you're gonna pay up for. But if you're just starting out, hey, that's perfectly fine. You can always add more paint on your painting to get a darker or richer color if you want. There's always ways around things. But overall, these are fantastic and I would recommend them to anybody else out there. Likewise, if you have any particular allergy or breathing problems when it comes to vapor or thinners, hey, the cool thing about Winsor Newton paint is they also make a water mixable paint that you can use at home, which works fantastic. Awesome little hack if you live in like a studio apartment or small living space. This way you don't have to worry about the vapor as much because you can clean up all your paint with just water. But make sure to condition your brushes at the end. So you're probably thinking, I should probably switch over to Winsor Newton paints. And yeah, you probably should. However, if you're a brand new painter out there, I still recommend sticking with the Bob Ross beginner starter painting kit and or the paints that you can get from the Bob Ross company. Since they're specially formulated, you're gonna have an easier time learning the tricks, the hacks, and the trades to make you a better painter to get confidence. And when you have that confidence, then I would probably recommend leaping over to the Winsor Newton side, and then you could build up your skills and then play around and pick and choose what you want. Now, if you need any more help, I'm gonna do you a favor. I'm gonna put a video over here to the side that shows you some awesome tips to make you a better painter, as well as links below on where you can buy all the supplies that I use. Until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay beautiful, and stay creative, and I will see you all later. Take care, and of course, peace.